everyone, this is Matthias for another do-it-yourself video. This time something different from cars. I'm going through a whole renovation in the house, and there's one issue that you might run into, which is dealing with sliding doors, mirror doors that are actually too tall. Why would that happen? In my case, it's because I had to re-level my floors. They were slanted by up to 1.5 inches to 2 inches at the highest point, and I needed to re-level that. So when I re-leveled the floor, automatically the floor went up in some areas, didn't move in some others, but my sliding doors, the mirror doors, were too tall. So hard to really mitigate that, unless if you actually get some custom doors made that tend to be quite expensive. So my approach, which is always on the inexpensive side or do-it-yourself side as often as I can, is to cut the door, which is actually pretty simple, remarkably simple. This door right here is the one we're going to look into. This is a little bit wider than your standard door, but it's too tall by about 1.5 inches. I found a pretty good way to actually get this done now. That was not after failing at it, and as you can tell in these pictures, the failure was pretty dramatic, like beyond repair. It's unfortunate because now that I know how to do it, I would be able to actually cut them properly. But I wanted to share my knowledge and my experience with some of you in the event that you wouldn't run into the same situation. You'll see it's actually pretty simple. Let's look at what tools we need to get this done. So to get the job done, you will need a few tools, expectedly. Number one, you're dealing with glass and some potentially sharp edges. So you want to protect yourself, and that your safety should be your number one priority. So you only need a pair of gloves. Second is you need a diamond wheel, and this is this little device right here. So this piece will allow you to cut your glass, right? This one is actually, it's a little blurry right now, can't get it to focus, but it's pretty inexpensive. You can find this on Amazon, about 2 for like 20 bucks. So it's very, very easy to find. And this will allow you to cut the glass. Then you need a ruler. I've got this aluminum ruler right here that allows you to actually draw a line and make sure you stay on that path. You'll need a Sharpie to go along with it that I forgot to add. Safety glasses, again, around your safety naturally. You'll need a couple of pieces of wood, and I'll explain to you why you need that. It's going to help you actually make the cut straight and make sure that you break the glass following the line that you're drawing. And you'll need 2 clamps, and I'll show this to you in a few minutes. This entire job could be literally 15 minutes. I will try to make this video as quick as I can, although I don't want to rush the job because I don't want to break the door, because this will be an actual project for me. So hopefully everything is going to go well, but it shouldn't take too long. And at the end, you will need a Dremel, and that's to trim the actual aluminum trim around the door. Because you'll have to cut it shorter, similar to what you're doing for the glass. So let's look at the first step to get this done. So the first step to get this done is to bring this big door, which is right here, typical sliding door, right? So you got a couple of guides at the bottom that I will show you in more details in a moment, and 2 wheels at the top that are adjustable and that are basically running on a track. Obviously, it's very complicated to move the track in the event your door is too tall, so I did not even cover that option because it would require some pretty serious work. That's usually not an option. So we're gonna work on trimming this door and see what happens and how that goes. So we're gonna grab this door and put it flat on this table frame. You want something like this, and it could be 2 workhorses, for instance, that you're working as well. You want a pretty steady structure to do this on. You don't want something that's too wobbly. This is a steel frame that I just happen to have here. I was waiting to actually put a top on it. So I'm going to use this to cut the door. And the first step is to take the door and put it flat on that table. So I'm going to start with that. All right, our door is now flat and sitting on the table. This door is pretty large in size, so it's definitely easier to move if you have 2 people, so I would strongly recommend you do this if you can. Once it's flat, the first step is going to be to remove the gliders at the bottom. So these are the guides that you see here. I'm going to get a little closer so that I can show you how to do this. It's actually pretty easy. This glider is actually will adjust depending actually on the location of the top wheels The tracks are adjustable. I'm gonna actually go there to show you, but you would have seen this before. Standard wheels, right, that are sitting on a screw that will let you adjust it up and down. So depending on the height, obviously, of the top wheel, then the bottom, which is actually snapped into a track, will adjust accordingly. And this is what you see here. And the first step is to remove these little guys. There's one on each side, and they're actually held by a little latch that is sitting in this groove right here. So I'm gonna try not to mask the light. So right here, there's a little latch that you will need a sharp tool, like something like this, for instance, which is a little pokey tool, right? A little pointy tool to get into the opening, lift up the little latch, which I'm gonna do right now. Hopefully it's gonna go well, because earlier I had some issues with another one that I was cutting and it did not go that well. So you lift it up, and once the little latch is actually lifted up, the track should come out. So the trick here, and I had to do this a couple times, is that sometimes it just, drop the tool. Sometimes it gets caught at the top right here, right? So if that's the case, and if you get caught on the top and you can't clear the opening, what I did earlier is just push it down a little bit. There you go, it did move. Gonna keep going. And try to clear it now. And I still can clear it, which means that the little tab in there is probably bent out of shape and it won't come out. Oh, it did come out. There you go. Got lucky here. So this is what it looks like, right? So you have a tab right here, which is designed on a piece of metal that bends, right? And when you bend it, when you slide it in the opening, that little piece here locks into place. See, it's out of alignment. So you force it in, and then this just springs into place and locks it into the trim. Okay, so you need to go and get in the opening and try to lift it up so that it lines up with the opening in order to be able to pull it out. And that's the trick with this too, right? So this is one that's out. I'm gonna take the other one out and get to the next step. To remove the things, I mentioned to you that you could use one of these pointy tools, right? And try to get the tab from the little opening here. I found another way to do it, which I really should have thought of before. It's with a long screwdriver, a flat screwdriver. And if you actually run it through the trim here and lift up the little tab, that's actually inside, the thing comes right out, right? So much quicker, much easier than poking around with that little pointy tool that you might or might not have. Chances are you probably have a flat screwdriver, because that's a pretty common tool. So I thought I would mention that because I just realized that this was significantly easier to do it this way. All right, so our two guides are out. The second one actually came out really easily, so that was fast. As you can tell, it's not too complicated. Now we need to flip the door around, because we will need to draw the line and cut the glass and prepare it for cutting. We have a couple more steps before we get there. There you go. Very easy. I'm going to bring it a little bit closer to the edge of the wood, and I'll explain to you why in a moment. So here, we're going to prepare the glass for cutting. And in order to do this, the first step is going to be to free the glass out of the guides, out of the trim that's around, right? And the easiest way that I have found to do this is to use one of the pieces of wood that I was showing you earlier. So this is like a 1x4 piece of wood, right? And gently, you're going to tap, starting from the bottom, and you'll see that the rail is just going to start disengaging from the glass, right? See? And you make your way up slowly, but you don't have to take it all out. And that's the key here. I highly recommend you don't take it all out, because this is gonna keep a little bit of rigidity to your glass. So I'm only going about halfway through, right? And then I do the exact same thing on the other side. which is pretty much the same process, right? Well, this one is struggling a little bit. You can lift up the glass a bit so that it comes out more easily, because otherwise the weight of the glass is actually preventing the trim from coming out. I didn't do it earlier because I wanted to show you on camera. There you go. So now we have the glass that's sitting on on my piece of wood right here, and we're gonna need to take the trim out, the bottom trim. Very easy, right? Same process. You want to go easy so that you're not bending it out of shape, because this is aluminum at the end, so it's easy to bend. Once you have this, you can tell that there was a little piece of what looks like masking tape that was put at the bottom, and that's essentially to ease up the inserting the trim onto the edge of the glass, right? So once you have this here, it goes pretty fast. So you grab your aluminum guide, right? And the easiest way that I've found is actually to keep it there. And that's one of the reasons why you want to keep the trim in place, is to actually just kind of, you know, place it in between the trim and the glass, right? So that it's actually holding nice and somewhat tight. And that's going to help you actually draw the line that you want to draw. In this case, this glass needs to be trimmed by about 1.5 inches, right? Because I raised the floor quite a bit in that room. So I'm gonna measure the space here to 1.5 inches roughly, right? It's about 1.5 inches. That's the way I cut the other door. So I want to make sure that I stay consistent here. Once you have it in place, draw your line. The line is fundamentally just a guide that will help you make sure that your guide, your aluminum ruler or whatever you're using, is not moving, right? So once you have this in place, you grab your clamps, right? And we're gonna put one on one end, and you will see it's gonna sandwich the glass between the guide, my aluminum ruler here, and the wood, which is underneath. And before I do that, I'm going a little too fast here. You wanna make sure that the glass is actually sitting on the wood. I just noticed that I'm too far out right now. So I'm gonna push this in to make sure that it's sitting fully onto the wood. And the reason why you do this is to make sure that when you draw your line and when you actually mark it with your diamond, you are on a strong surface that will not bow, that will not go out of shape, and that will give you a nice even marking across your glass, right? So I'm now gonna put my clamp on. There you go. Don't have to tighten it too much really, because it's just a guide at the end. Okay, I'm along my line. The one thing that you have to keep in mind is that I'm actually clamping on both ends here. And there's the thickness of the glass between the ruler and the wood. So my ruler now is bowing up a little bit, right, in the middle. So it's arcing. So I'm gonna have to push down here at the time I mark the glass. And this is a key moment. So you're gonna grab your diamond wheel. And the goal here, to make sure, so normally you put a little bit of lubricant in it, oil typically, right? You wanna make sure that it works. So you're gonna press down on it, make sure you have oil coming out, which is working on my end. And you want to apply the same pressure across the glass when you mark it. And you should make a pretty distinct sound that you will hear in just a moment. So here we go, that's the kind of the critical part. You hear this little cracky sound, and you're gonna go along the glass, applying the same pressure, hearing this little cracky sound along the edge, along your line. And this is it. The key is that you do it once. You do not go multiple times. And it's very, very important. I've learned the hard way, and I broke 3 doors because of that. And from what I've read, when you run the wheel, you're actually creating a small fracture line, a series of small fracture lines in the glass. If you do it multiple times, you're gonna get too many of these fracture lines, and you're not gonna have an even break. You're not gonna have an even line that's ready to break. You're gonna have a sequence of multiple fracture lines that will not break evenly. And like I said, I learned the hard way, and believe me, it was not fun. In fact, I've really procrastinated doing this again because I thought I would fail over and over again. Now the key is to break the glass, right? So you want to bring your line above the edge of the wood, right? So see, my wood is actually right here, and the line is slightly over, right? So you want to get this done this way, ideally, to ensure that you have a good support for the glass at the time you will be breaking it. Now, I came up with this little system here, which allows me to break the glass in a more even way. And this is the reason why you want to have this piece of wood. And the way I did it is I actually placed the lower piece of wood about 1 inch in, because I have 1.5 inches that I'm trying to trim. And I'm going to place this at the top here. It's not easy to do it when you're alone, so just bear with me here. And clamp it in place on both ends, right? So that's the reason why you need 2. And you want to clamp that piece of wood right on the edge, right? And the reason why you're doing this is because you want to put the same pressure along the piece of glass that you're cutting off in order to ensure that that the cut and that the pressure that you put on the line is the same, right? So now if everything goes well, you grab on the top of the clamps right here. I'm gonna try to actually go a little bit wider. You go and you apply some pressure, you pull towards you. There we go. So you see my both hands here. I'm going to press very gently towards me, and it failed. So it failed, but it's recoverable. But you see exactly why I was actually recommending to have a piece of wood at the top, because it snapped correctly, except at the end here, right? So hopefully I'll be able to fix that. So the good thing is that I left the tape on the back of the mirror. So it's actually holding on its own right now. And I'm just gonna move this clamp over along with a piece of wood. There you go. And clamp it back in place. There you go. And apply the same pressure, so the same idea here. And my piece of wood is moving a little bit, so bear with me here. That's how these things sometimes don't go as planned. And this is literally me trying to make it work. So you might run into a similar issue. So there you go. And I'm gonna apply the same pressure again. This is resisting a little too much. And you see, this is exactly what happens here when you don't actually mark the glass correctly. Now, there's one thing that I forgot to do and that I did previously is tapping the glass a little bit, right? So when you tap the glass, and that could be why this is happening. When you tap the glass lightly, you actually create the fracture line that you need. And I forgot to do this because I was rushing through the video. And that's what happened. So I'm gonna cut this now. You need a little cutting knife, right? And I'm gonna try to fix this. It's not over yet. I can still get this right. But as you can tell, make sure that you tap the glass before you actually cut it. And I really regret that I forgot to do this because it probably would have done just fine otherwise. There you go. So this is out. So let's see if we can get the rest to come out. You see, we're very, very close, right? We're very close. Unfortunately, now there's a little bit of complexity and complication. And it's really too bad because the two previous doors that I did went perfectly well. So we'll see. And here, what I'm going to do is use a pair of pliers. Make sure you grab it as close to the edge as possible and snap it, right? And you can tell that it's coming, but this should have been coming at the same time as the rest, obviously. In this case, it's unfortunately not really happening as cleanly, but luckily I'm able to still fix it. And you can tell that it's actually coming, it's breaking very easily right now, right along this line of fracture. So it's really a matter of, tapping the glass is something that my dad actually taught me, and I asked him for details and his advice on how to get this done. And he told me, look, when you're cutting glass, you want to mark the glass with this diamond wheel, but you want to actually make sure that the cracks you're creating with the diamond wheel are actually penetrating the glass in its entire thickness. And to do this, it's just a matter of fundamentally weakening the glass further by just tapping a little bit on it, right? So it's very, very easy. I'm gonna leave it at that because right now my cut is okay, and I really don't want to risk it. I broke some doors previously. This is not gonna be a problem because you can easily put the trim back on and it's gonna hide the line, the cut line. So it's really not an issue. But the two previous ones, again, as I explained, did not go well. And as you could see on the pictures earlier. So now the hard part is done, really. The next step that you need to do is trim the aluminum frame, right? Very easy to do. That's when you use your Dremel. And I will probably spare you the details because there's not much, it's not really interesting, but you use a cutting wheel, right? You make sure you wear your safety glasses, obviously. You mark the section that you want to cut, which is an inch and a half, and you trim it, right? So I'm going to do this right now, and I will probably speed up the video so that you're not bored with that. And then I'll show you the last part, which is recreating the little notches that the tabs lock into place for the guides at the bottom of the glass. Now this is ready to go back in place, and we will make the last notch in just a moment. I'm gonna trim the other side and then I'll show you how to do this. Super easy, we're almost done. All right, I'm done cutting both sides. So pretty simple overall. Gonna grab this door, and so be very careful, right? Because the edges can be sharp and you could really cut yourself easily when handling the door. So be very mindful of that. Now, what we're gonna do is flip the door on its other side. Before we do this, we want to try to put the glass back into the grooves on the trim because that will give it the rigidity that you need to flip it around, right? So it's pretty simple. Well, it's easier when you're two people, but again, you grab it on both sides. You kind of press it against you, okay? You tap it a little bit so that you put it in place. You can check at the end, right, if the glass is fully inserted. And here we're good. The glass is, coming really nicely within the end of the trim, so we're good to go. I'm gonna flip this door around. Again, easier to do when you're two people. And now we have the other side of the door, and we're gonna look at the little notch that I was telling you about earlier to put the guides back into place. So super simple, right? So this is This is the wrong side. This is the one. So I got the one that's coming from this side, if you recall, right? This brass color. What I will do, and I did this on all the doors, is squeeze this in a little bit because it's a little bit too open right now. This is supposed to really clamp onto the edge. So I will actually clamp it down a little bit and close the gap. But fundamentally what you want to do, because now obviously the opening is no longer there, it's sitting 1.5 inches lower, is to recreate that little opening, right? And it's very easy, really. I'll show you how to do it. Grab a Sharpie, right? You mark where the line starts, roughly where it ends. Put a little marky line here, right? So I got my opening right now. And you're gonna grab the Dremel and you're gonna hold it vertical, and we're just gonna cut an opening in there. You'll see how quick that is. And there you go. Now you have an opening, right? That's very similar to the other one, right? It's just sitting where it's supposed to sit. So, like I said, I'm just gonna close the gap a little bit here. So, ooh, that's very close. There we go. So you just grab it, right? Open your pliers a little bit. Grab it on the side so that you're sitting on the metal. And just gonna close this a little bit. There we go. See? Closer. Now, before we put it back into place, we will put the trim back in place again also, which goes this way from what I remember. Yes, goes this way. So to put the trim back, let me show this to you real quick. Super easy, right? You engage it on one side. This is already kind of shaped in such a way that the glass will naturally insert itself in there, right? So it's really simple. You want to make sure your edges are fully inserted so that you can center it correctly. And once you're there, make sure you put it the right way, because you have these little notches here, right? And these little notches are 2 notches where the guide will insert into, right? So let me show you. On this end, for instance, you have this little notch right here, right, at the bottom. And that notch inserts here, like so. So you have to make sure this is facing the right way. So in this case, it's facing my way, so I'm good. Again, you want to insert it gently on one side, tap it a little bit. Make sure if you can make sure the tape is sitting in there correctly. Tap it gently. There you go, it's fully inserted. And there you go, your guide is in place. If you realize that it's not centered correctly, which I just did here by accident, then you grab your wood, you put it at the very end, and you type lightly, and it's just gonna slide its way where you need it to be. So very easy to do. Now I got my glass, everything is sitting well. I'm gonna zoom back on here to show you how this actually inserts, but you'll see how easy that is. So I got my my little tab that I bent a little closer. I'm gonna insert it in there. I'm gonna make sure the lower tab is inserted as well. And the top here should slide pretty easily into the new opening that I just made. And you might want to pull on it a little bit so that it's facing correctly. And if it's not facing, or if it's not opening correctly, you can use a little screwdriver, which I have here. Pry this open a little bit more so that you can get it in. And there you go. Now the tab is already slightly inserted. Not sure whether you can tell here. Let me show you a little bit better. There you go. See how it started to get inserted? The tab will naturally get in there. What I just realized is that the bottom here slipped out of place. So I need to fix this. So I'm gonna take it out, slip the bottom in, and then insert the top. Might need to wiggle it a little bit, but it's nothing really too complicated. And it's not collaborating here too much, but it will ultimately. So again, if your hole is too tight, you might want to actually leave your Dremel in there a little bit longer, just so that you have an opening that's wide enough. There you go. It just got in there. It's just a matter of clicking it in. There you go, you heard it click, nice little click. Now it's locked in and it's not gonna move. So that's it, the job is really done almost. It's just a matter of putting the other side in, which fundamentally is the exact same thing. So I'm gonna cut the hole. I might leave my Dremel a little bit longer in there, simply to make the hole a little bit bigger and make sure that I'm not struggling just like I did on the other side to insert the little latch in there. So going to do this right now. You can actually speed up if you, I mean, I'm sure you get the idea by now. It's not really complicated. And the job will be done, basically. So pretty simple. Obviously not the simplest job, right? So don't be too scared about it, because quite frankly, I did a little bit of research, and there's always a learning experience in what you fail. And I've failed quite a bit, believe me. But you don't want to give up, right? Because ultimately, getting a custom door made will cost you hundreds of dollars. And when you can fix it yourself and do something like this fairly easily, I think it's worth it. So let me make this cut. I'm gonna leave my Dremel a little bit longer in there to make it a little bit wider, and that will make the insertion of the tab much easier. Much better. Really, again, leave your tool in there a little bit longer. You'll see it's gonna save you a lot of time. So same idea, I'm gonna just squeeze this a little bit. There we go. So now I got a tab that's sitting much closer. You insert it at the bottom, similar to what we did on the other side. You make sure the latch gets in the lower part, right here, right? And that's what I was showing you earlier, right? There's a little, in this case, you have two latches because there are different systems. And sometimes the second hole will be used instead of the first one. Once you're there, you line it up with your opening. You might need to pull on the trim a little bit to make sure it lines up. And it is in there already. See, it was much easier. And you place it in, right? There you go. The whole thing actually is going to be under its own weight, right? Under the weight of the door. So it's really not going to move that much, right? But you know, it's a very, again, it's a very easy process. If you ever have issues with your guides, which does happen, top of bottom or bottom, just be aware that you can actually replace these parts, right? You don't have to get the entire door redone, or if the track is screwed up, you can replace the track. They're a little tricky to take out, to be honest, because there's a little latch on the plastic piece here that latches into the track, and sometimes it's a bit of a pain in the butt to take out, but it's with a screwdriver you can pry it off, and usually it comes off pretty easily. So this is it, guys. I hope this was helpful. The door is done, right? So I will actually take it out and make sure it's actually not broken, because sometimes this does happen too. So let me just do this right now. I will put it back on there anyways. Just gonna wipe the dust a little bit here. And make sure you wear your safety equipment. That goes without saying. So grab this door, put it on its end, and make sure it's not broken or it didn't crack or anything. And it didn't. Perfect, beautiful. That actually makes me quite happy. So the door is cut, It's now an inch and a half shorter. It's looking beautiful. I'm gonna give it a nice wipe and clean it up a bit. But as you can tell, this is totally doable. If I could do it, you can do it. Make sure you get the right tools and just do a little bit of research online if you don't feel comfortable. If you have questions, let me know. You can put it in the comments. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. So good luck with your little project. Hi everyone, this is part 2 of the first video that I did. You might have thought that, okay, well, this guy absolutely has no idea what he's doing. He just did a video to show us how to fail. And I forgot one step that I wanted to describe in this particular video and do it again. I happen to have a couple more doors to cut. So this one is more narrow, right? It's standard size. I think it's 24 inches. Yeah, a little bit, 24 and a half inches. So same contraption, right? So still my 2 clamps, my aluminum ruler as a guide. It's clamped to the wood and it's sitting on the wood so that I can apply some even pressure to cut the glass. So I'm gonna do it again, and so my little wheel works well, no problem. So I'm gonna apply the same pressure again, even pressure, and listen to the noise, right? All right, so the reason why I did it again is because my wheel moved out of alignment. So now I have 2 cracks. So let's see how that goes. Now the one step that I forgot to add last time, and I'm gonna explain that to you right now because it's a critical step really, is the tapping of the glass, right? So tapping of the glass allows for the micro fractures that you created by running your diamond on the glass to continue down within the glass, right? So this little wheel actually has got a metallic end, and I'm gonna use this to actually just tap the glass all along. And that should help quite a bit. So let's see how that goes. Same process as what I did last time, right? I'm gonna bring it to the edge of the wood. I will put a piece of wood, which actually in this case is basically the exact width of what I need, which was not the case on the previous one because the door I was cutting was actually wider. And I'm gonna bring this a little bit further in. I'm gonna put my piece of wood underneath. Attach it, make sure it's centered somewhat, and I will make the adjustment in a moment. And I want to move that piece of wood to the edge, right? Because you want to apply that pressure on the edge of the glass. Now, there's a chance for this to go wrong again. So I'm gonna put a little disclaimer here that this might not be perfect because of the fact that my wheel did slide, but you see, just the weight of the clamps, and there you go. Your glass is actually broken here. So this one went really fast, went really well. The cut is clean, okay, so that's normal, just fell. And you will see that actually on that side here, it did actually come out of alignment, and that's because again my wheel unfortunately slipped, right? So it actually cut right along the line that I drew at first. So I'm gonna have to try to fix this. This shouldn't be too complicated. I'll probably just tap it and use some pliers just like I did last time. But you can tell that here it went remarkably well, and the tapping is probably what makes the difference. Again, the whole idea about the tapping is to kind of extend the the fracture to the inside of the glass, so that the time you're actually ready to cut, there you go, then it cuts basically super easily. Right? So let's see if we can actually get this to break. That little piece here, that's unfortunately out of alignment, but we might be able to fix that. So again, I'm gonna grab my pliers. It's a very small piece, so hopefully, yeah, there you go. See, it's just breaking along the line, the second line. It's actually breaking very easily. There you go. So I fixed that. There's very little here. Be very careful when you like, don't tap the glass like that, just like I did. This is actually a bad idea. This could actually create a crack along the glass, and you'll end up with a big crack, right? So it's an addendum to my previous video. I just thought I would correct this because the whole tapping along the glass before you break it could be literally a make or break type of trick. So make sure you don't forget to do this. And as you can tell, the cut is actually perfect here. It was really fast, and I'm just gonna do the other one now. So I thought I would actually add this video to clarify the methodology. I hope this helps. Good luck.